first time I arrived in Iceland. The plane touched down under a sky that refused to turn dark. The sun hovered there, tired, golden, but stubborn, as if it couldn't decide whether to stay or leave. It was almost midnight, and yet children were still playing outside. Their laughter drifted through the pale air like echoes of another world. I had been on the road for decades, through deserts that swallowed sound and cities that never slept. But Iceland was different. It didn't shout to impress you, it whispered. Here, silence has a texture. You can feel it pressing softly against your skin. Even the wind speaks slowly, as if it knows how easily the human heart breaks. They call this the land of fire and ice. But to me, it felt more like the land between light and shadow. A place where time moves gently enough for you to hear your own heartbeat again. This isn't a story about tourism. It's about a country that seems to breathe in rhythm with the earth itself. A place where people live half a year under a sun that never sets, and half a year in near total darkness, yet still manage to smile. If you stay long enough, you'll begin to understand. The light here doesn't only come from the sky. It comes from within the people, their calmness, their quiet pride, the way they live simply, as if each day were enough. I've seen too many places that worship noise. But in Iceland, even silence feels holy. Welcome to fascinating discoveries. If this world still surprises you, stay a little longer. Let's walk through Iceland together, one quiet breath at a time. Number 1. Between light and darkness, the people who create their own sun. I drove north along a road that seemed to lead nowhere, a thin gray line stretching between mountains and mist. The radio had lost its signal hours ago. All that remained was the sound of gravel beneath the tires and the low hum of wind crawling across the plains. It was midsummer, but the sun hung low, circling the sky like a shy wanderer afraid of the horizon. In Reykjavik, people were still awake, reading in parks, biking through the golden haze, sipping coffee by open windows. It was 11 at night, yet no one seemed in a hurry to sleep. They called it the midnight sun. For me, it felt like standing between two breaths of the same day, as if time had forgotten to close its eyes. In the north, in small towns like Akureyri, the light never truly fades. It stretches thin and pale, like silk pulled across the sky. You could walk for hours and never lose your shadow. And yet, when winter comes, this same land sinks into near endless night. From November to February, daylight lasts barely 4 hours. The rest is darkness, soft, dense, and almost alive. You'd think that would drive people into sadness. But the Icelanders somehow have made peace with it. They gather in steaming pools, drink strong coffee, and light candles in every window. Their laughter echoes through the dark, and for a moment, you forget the absence of the sun. They told me once, "We don't chase light, we created it." I looked around and saw it was true, not in the sky, but in their faces, their patience, their quiet joy. In Iceland, even the dark glows a little. Number 2. Women of ice and fire. Strength wrapped in silence. In the next days, I wandered across small towns scattered between lava fields and ocean wind. The air smelled faintly of salt and earth, and the light, always soft, never harsh, seemed to forgive everything it touched. In a quiet cafe near the harbor, I met a woman named Elín. She was drinking black coffee, her hair still damp from the morning mist. She told me she was a teacher, a mother, and sometimes a poet when the nights grew too long. In her voice, I heard something I rarely find anymore. Calm certainty, the kind that comes from living in rhythm with something larger than ambition. She spoke of Icelandic women, not as a group to be admired, but as people who simply do what must be done. They drive through snow to reach school, repair their own roofs, raise children, and still find time to sit by the hot springs to breathe. They don't wait for permission to be strong. They already are. I asked if she ever felt lonely here, where the world ends in fog and sea. She smiled faintly and said, "Everyone here feels lonely, but it's a gentle kind, the kind that teaches you who you are." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the cafe door. For a brief moment, I understood what she meant. In Iceland, solitude isn't an absence, it's a mirror. You see yourself clearly, stripped of noise, stripped of pretending. Maybe that's why the women here walk with such quiet grace. They have learned how to stand in the storm and still remain whole. Number 3. The black beach and the sea that never forgets. That evening, I drove toward the coast. The road curved along cliffs that seemed to fall straight into the sea. Below, the waves were black and cold, and the wind howled like it had a memory of every ship ever lost there. Then I saw it, Reynisfjara, a beach made not of gold or white, but of pure volcanic black. The sand shimmered like crushed glass under the dim sun, and the basalt columns rose from the ground like ancient organs built by giants. The sound of the waves striking those columns was deep and slow, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. There were no palm trees, no sunbathers, only a few figures in thick coats, standing in silence. No one spoke. You don't talk much when the world looks like that. You just breathe and let it move through you. I sat on a rock, watching the tide erase footprints as fast as they were made. And I thought, this beach wasn't made for people to play. It was made to remind us of scale, of how small we are, of how beauty doesn't need warmth or comfort to exist. A local man told me the waves here can reach 40 feet high. He said, "We tell tourists to stay back, but sometimes they don't listen. The sea always wins." Then he smiled, not proudly, not sadly, just as if he had accepted that truth long ago. There was something about that acceptance that stayed with me. In most places, we try to control everything, the sea, the sky, even each other. But here, they live with it. They bow to the rhythm, not fight against it. The wind turned colder. I stood there until my fingers went numb, until the last light melted into gray. And for once, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Number 4. The water that heals, where bathing becomes a prayer. The next morning, I found myself in a public swimming pool on the outskirts of Reykjavik. Steam rose gently from the blue surface, curling into the cold air. Around me, people talked quietly in Icelandic, their voices blending with the sound of water. There were no private stalls, no curtains. Everyone walked in and out as naturally as breathing. Here, bathing wasn't a private act. It was a ritual, a part of daily life. You had to wash thoroughly before entering, not out of modesty, but out of respect for the water, for the others, for the earth itself. At first, I felt awkward, but that feeling dissolved as quickly as the fog. There was no shame here, no sense of judgment, just people being people, stripped of titles and appearances, meeting each other in warmth and water. An older man beside me smiled and said, "We've been doing this for generations. The rules keep the water clean, and maybe," he added, "they keep us clean too." Later, I visited the Blue Lagoon, famous to the world, glowing like liquid turquoise between black rocks. The air smelled faintly of minerals. I dipped my hands into the steaming water and felt its strange softness. A woman beside me whispered that it wasn't a natural spring, that the water came from a nearby geothermal plant. Yet no one seemed to mind. It didn't matter where it came from. It mattered how it made you feel. Still, I wanted something quieter, less touched by cameras and crowds. So I hiked into a valley called Reykjadalur. The trail wound through steam rising from the ground, the earth breathing through cracks in its skin. And there, between mossy hills, a small, hot river flowed. I stepped in, the warmth wrapping around me like an embrace. No fences, no signs, just the sound of running water and a distant bird call. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a traveler. I felt like part of something. Ancient, calm, alive. Maybe that's what Iceland teaches best, to stop chasing comfort and to start belonging. Number 5. Ice cream in the snow. Small joys that refuse to die. That night, as the wind howled softly through the empty streets of Reykjavik, I found myself standing in front of a small ice cream shop. The thermometer read -10 degrees. Yet there was a line. People laughing, chatting, their breath turning into white mist under the pale streetlight. I hesitated for a moment, then joined them. When it was my turn, the girl behind the counter handed me a vanilla cone, dipped in warm chocolate. The chocolate hardened instantly in the cold air. I took a bite. It was absurd. Cold sweetness in colder weather. But somehow it made perfect sense. In Iceland, ice cream isn't about the season, it's about the moment. People eat it in the snow, after work, after swimming, after long drives through the dark. It's a quiet rebellion against the harshness of nature, a way of saying you can't freeze our joy. I sat in my car, watching snowflakes drift through the light of a distant gas station. Couples walked by, holding cones, laughing. I remembered how, in other countries, people chase warmth. Here, they seem to have found something different: contentment. There's a certain beauty in the way Icelanders live. They don't wait for the world to be kind before they start smiling. They find small reasons, like ice cream on a freezing night, to remind themselves that life is still sweet. I took another bite, and the chocolate cracked gently. Outside, the snow began to fall thicker, covering the roads in silence. And for a fleeting moment, sitting there in the middle of that frozen world, I realized something simple. Happiness doesn't need to be loud or perfect or warm. Sometimes it's just the quiet crunch of chocolate against cold air. Number 6. Living beside a sleeping volcano. I left Reykjavik before dawn, heading south toward a small village called Vik. The road ran through empty plains and silent hills, where steam rose gently from cracks in the earth. The car heater hummed faintly, the only sound between me and the endless dark. By the time I reached the coast, the first light of day had begun to climb over the sea. Vik was still asleep, a handful of houses, a church on a hill, and the black sand stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Behind the village stood Katla, one of the most active volcanoes in Iceland, hidden under layers of ice. They say the people here live with it like a quiet neighbor. Every year, the town holds a drill. A siren sounds, and everyone runs toward the church, the highest point, where they'd be safe if Katla were to wake. Children learn this as early as they learn to walk. I spoke to a fisherman mending his nets by the shore. His hands were thick and scarred from years of salt and wind. When I asked if he feared the volcano, he shrugged. "It's always been there," he said. "We don't live in fear. We live with it." That simple sentence lingered. We live with it. In most parts of the world, people try to forget danger. They build walls, buy insurance, plan escape routes. But here, they simply acknowledge it as part of life, like winter or rain. They don't pretend to be stronger than the earth. They just stand beside it, quietly. When I climbed up to the church later, the view took my breath away. The sea below roared like something alive, and the wind smelled of snow. For a long moment, I just stood there, between the volcano and the ocean, between fear and acceptance. and thought, maybe peace isn't the absence of danger. Maybe it's learning how to live, even when the ground beneath you might break. Number 7. Between Two Worlds, the breath of the earth. Further inland, I reached a valley where two continents meet. It's called Thingvellir, a name that sounds like thunder when spoken aloud. There, the land itself is split apart, a great rift where the tectonic plates of North America and Eurasia drift away from each other, little by little, year after year. I walked along the edge of that rift, where the rocks are dark and sharp, and streams of glacier water run like veins through the earth. It's said you can dive here, into a place called Silfra, the only spot on Earth where you can swim between two continents. The water is so clear that you can see for nearly 100 meters, like floating through glass. I met a diver who had just surfaced, his face flushed from the cold. He told me, "You can actually touch both continents at once, one hand on America, one on Europe. It feels like holding history." Then he laughed quietly. "But it's not just that. Down there, everything is still. The world disappears. You don't hear your breath anymore. You only feel it." I understood what he meant. There's something sacred about that stillness. The water, fed by melting glaciers, travels through layers of volcanic rock for decades before reaching Silfra. By the time it arrives, it's pure enough to drink. It's like the earth itself filters every imperfection before letting it go. I knelt beside the stream and cupped some of that water in my hands. It was so clear it looked invisible. When I drank, it tasted like nothing, and yet somehow like everything. Cold, sharp, alive. Standing there between two worlds, I realized how rare it is to be in a place that exists entirely on its own terms. Iceland doesn't bend to time or trend. It just is. Ancient, patient, self-contained. And maybe that's what draws people here. Not the beauty, not the adventure, but the reminder that the world, even when it breaks apart, can still remain whole. Number 8. The Horses That Remember, Blood of the North. I left the Rift Valley behind and drove west, where the hills softened and the wind carried the faint scent of the sea. On a narrow road lined with moss and mist, I stopped by a farm, small, silent, framed by the slow breath of clouds. In the distance, a group of horses grazed in the cold light. They were smaller than I expected, barely reaching my shoulder, with thick manes that swayed like river grass in the wind. An old woman stood by the fence, feeding them pieces of dry hay. When I greeted her, she smiled and said, "They are not ponies, you know. Never call them that." Her voice was gentle, but her pride was unmistakable. "These are Icelandic horses," she said. "Pure blood for more than 1,000 years. If one leaves the island, it can never return." I walked closer and reached out to touch one. Its coat was warm, almost silky, and when it moved, it did so with an elegance that didn't belong to its size. The woman told me about a special gait they have, a smooth, rolling motion called tolt. "You can hold a glass of beer while riding," she said, "and not spill a drop." We both laughed, and for a moment the wind felt softer. She told me that these horses carried their ancestors across mountains, through storms, through winters that lasted half a year. "They remember everything," she whispered. "That's why we never breed them with outsiders. We don't want them to forget who they are." As I watched them trot across the field, I thought of how easily people lose that, the sense of where they come from. We travel, we move, we change, until sometimes we forget the rhythm that once made us whole. But here, even the animals keep their lineage like a heartbeat. The horses moved farther into the fog, their silhouettes fading into the silver distance. And I stood there a while longer, listening to the soft sound of hooves on frozen earth, a rhythm older than language, older than longing. In Iceland, even silence has ancestry. Number 9. Where the elves still live. I left the city again, chasing stories that only silence could tell. Beyond the last cluster of houses, Iceland turned wild once more. Endless plains, waterfalls tumbling through canyons, and skies so wide they made you feel like a forgotten thought in the mind of God. I stopped by a small village in the northeast, a place where people still believe in elves. The locals call them Huldufolk, the hidden people. They say the elf queen lives on a nearby hill, and no one dares to disturb it. Even road builders once changed their plans to leave the sacred rock untouched. It sounded like folklore, but standing there, surrounded by fog and the smell of wet grass, I began to understand. Maybe believing in elves isn't about magic. Maybe it's just another way of respecting what we can't see. Further along the coast, I found waterfalls that defied description. Seljalandsfoss, where you can walk behind the curtain of falling water and feel its breath against your skin. Then Skogafoss, roaring like a cathedral made of thunder, its mist catching 2 rainbows at once. The locals say if you stand beneath it long enough, it will wash your sadness away. I watched people doing just that, heads tilted back, arms outstretched, laughing as the water drenched them. For a moment, everyone looked free. I kept driving until I reached Jökulsárlón, the glacial lagoon. Blue icebergs floated silently on still water, drifting slowly towards the sea. The air was so cold it burned when I breathed. Each iceberg glowed faintly from within, like frozen lanterns. They cracked softly as they moved, ancient ice breaking apart, becoming something new. I stood there for hours, unable to speak. Sometimes beauty hurts like that. It demands your silence. The world here doesn't shout, it just exists, vast, unbothered, eternal. And in that stillness, I finally understood why so many people come to Iceland searching for something they can't name. Because here, even the stones seem to remember you. Number 10. The festivals that defy the cold. I kept traveling east, where the land seemed to stretch forever, a wide emptiness broken only by rivers of silver ice and fields of quiet stone. Every few miles, I would pass a farmhouse, a single red roof glowing faintly in the gray. Somewhere between mountains and sea, I came upon a festival. At first, I thought it was a wedding. Laughter rising from a crowd gathered around a fire, the smell of grilled lamb, the sound of fiddles. But a woman explained it was Sumardagurinn Fyrsti, the first day of summer. She smiled at my surprise. "It's still cold, I know," she said, "but we celebrate the idea of warmth, not the temperature." Children ran barefoot through the grass while snowflakes drifted in the air. Teenagers licked ice cream cones, their faces pink from the wind. Even the old men laughed. Icelanders seem to have mastered a kind of optimism the rest of the world has forgotten. The ability to find joy before the reason for it arrives. Later that night, someone handed me a beer and told me about another celebration. Beer Day on March 1st. For 74 years, beer was banned here. When it was finally legalized, people took to the streets and never stopped celebrating. "It's not about the drink," the man said. "It's about freedom, and remembering not to take it for granted." There's something beautiful in how they honor even the smallest things. A season, a drink, a sheep returning home. Every autumn, farmers still gather for Rettir, a festival where the whole village helps herd sheep down from the mountains. The animals are sorted by hand, the air thick with laughter and wool and music. And in February, when the nights are longest, they chase the light, the Northern Lights Festival in Akureyri. People dance in the snow under a sky painted green and violet, as if heaven itself had come down to join them. Watching them, I thought, maybe celebration isn't about abundance. Maybe it's about defiance. a way of saying, we are still here, still alive, still grateful. In Iceland, even the cold knows how to smile. Number 11. The art of living with less. The last weeks I spent in Iceland were quieter. The kind of quiet that seeps into your bones and stays there long after you leave. I had started to learn how people live here, not just survive, but live. Everything costs more. Rent, food, heat. But no one complains much. Maybe it's because they've learned to trade excess for peace. A woman renting small cabins near the coast told me she lived on $2,000 a month, sometimes less. It's enough, she said. You just learn to use what you have. She baked her own bread, fished when the weather allowed, and walked everywhere instead of driving. She said she used to live in London, but the noise made her forget who she was. Here, she smiled. I remember. In Reykjavik, young people share small apartments, 3, sometimes 4 to a room. They cook together, buy used clothes, and heat their homes with geothermal water that smells faintly of sulfur. The warmth comes from the same ground that once terrified their ancestors. There's a strange poetry in that. Fear turned into comfort. Chaos turned into life. I met a student at a cafe who told me he never eats out. A meal costs $30, he said, laughing. So I cook, and somehow it tastes better that way. He spoke about balance, about not needing much to feel rich. A cup of coffee, a walk in the cold, a view of the mountains. Sometimes I think people in other countries spend their lives chasing what Icelanders already have. Space, stillness, air you can trust. When I left that evening, the sun was low, or maybe high. It was hard to tell. The light in Iceland doesn't obey rules. It just lingers, like a thought you're not ready to let go of. I stood by the harbor, watching the sea turn gold, and realized something I'd forgotten on all those journeys through crowded cities and forgotten towns. Peace doesn't come from having everything. It comes from finally wanting less. Number 12. The taste of the earth. Bread, eggs, and memory. On my last morning in Iceland, I drove toward a small village near Lake Mývatn. The air there smelled faintly of sulfur and damp earth, a scent that somehow felt honest, untouched by polish or perfume. Steam rose from cracks in the ground, twisting slowly into the pale sky. I stopped near a pool of hot water where locals were gathered, baskets in hand. They were boiling eggs, not in pots, but right there, in the steaming springs. I watched as they tied the eggs in nets and lowered them into the bubbling water. A few minutes later, they cracked them open, laughing at how soft and perfect they were. One man handed me an egg. It was warm against the cold wind. "Try it," he said. I did, and it tasted faintly of minerals and smoke, like something born from the earth itself. He smiled. "Everything here comes from the ground," he said, "even the bread." He was talking about rugbrauð, the dark rye bread they bake by burying dough in geothermal soil overnight. The heat of the earth cooks it slowly, giving it a sweetness that doesn't need sugar. I later tasted it with butter and smoked fish, and for a moment I forgot I was eating. It felt more like remembering something ancient. That night, in a small cabin, I tried skyr, the soft, thick cheese that foreigners mistake for yogurt. It's been part of Icelandic life for 1,000 years. Simple, humble, but strong, just like the people who make it. Someone told me that in winter, they hold a festival called Þorrablót. It's not for the faint-hearted. People eat fermented shark, boiled sheep's head, and pickled ram's testicles. A celebration of survival, they said, honoring ancestors who endured harsher times. I didn't try it, but I understood the meaning. It wasn't about taste, it was about gratitude, for being alive, for having enough. Later, as I sat by the window, snow falling in silence, I realized Iceland doesn't try to impress you. It doesn't ask to be loved. It simply exists, raw and beautiful, in its own truth. And maybe that's why I fell in love with it. Because sometimes, the world doesn't need to change to heal you. You just need to find a place quiet enough to listen. Number 13. The silence that changes everything. When it was finally time to leave, I packed my bags slowly, as if each fold of clothing were a way of delaying goodbye. The morning light was soft, almost silver, spreading quietly across the snowfields outside my window. The world felt weightless. The drive to the airport was long and silent. The road stretched endlessly between mountains draped in mist, and the radio played a faint Icelandic song, one of those melancholic tunes that sound like the sea humming to itself. I stopped once more along the way, near a frozen lake. The water was still, perfectly still, like a mirror holding its breath. I stood there, watching my reflection tremble slightly in the wind. And I thought, maybe that's what travel really does. It doesn't change the world. It just changes the way we see it. For years, I had crossed borders and continents, searching for stories. Stories of struggle, survival, beauty, pain. But Iceland wasn't a story. It was a pause, a space between two heartbeats. It reminded me that not everything needs to be conquered or captured. Some things are meant simply to be witnessed. When I boarded the plane, the clouds swallowed the ground, and for a moment, it felt as though I was leaving a dream I might never return to. But deep down, I knew a part of me would stay, in the light that never sets, in the cold that feels alive, in the people who smile quietly through the dark. Before the engines roared, I whispered to myself, not as a farewell, but as a truth I'd finally learned to accept. Maybe the world hasn't changed. Maybe only the way I see it has. Thank you for walking with me through Iceland. If this story found a place in you, stay a while longer. There are more journeys waiting, more voices, more silences, more truths that whisper beneath the noise. This is Fascinating Discoveries. And wherever you are tonight, may the world feel a little wider, and your heart a little quieter. When it was finally time to leave, I packed my bags slowly, as if each fold of clothing were a way of delaying goodbye. The morning light was soft, almost silver, spreading quietly across the snowfields outside my window. The world felt weightless. The drive to the airport was long and silent. The road stretched endlessly between mountains draped in mist, and the radio played a faint Icelandic song, one of those melancholic tunes that sound like the sea humming to itself. I stopped once more along the way, near a frozen lake. The water was still, perfectly still, like a mirror holding its breath. I stood there, watching my reflection tremble slightly in the wind. And I thought, maybe that's what travel really does. It doesn't change the world. It just changes the way we see it. For years, I had crossed borders and continents, searching for stories. Stories of struggle, survival, beauty, pain. But Iceland wasn't a story. It was a pause, a space between two heartbeats. It reminded me that not everything needs to be conquered or captured. Some things are meant simply to be witnessed. When I boarded the plane, the clouds swallowed the ground, and for a moment it felt as though I was leaving a dream I might never return to. But deep down, I knew a part of me would stay. In the light that never sets, in the cold that feels alive, in the people who smile quietly through the dark. Before the engines roared, I whispered to myself, not as a farewell, but as a truth I'd finally learned to accept. Maybe the world hasn't changed. Maybe only the way I see it has. Thank you for walking with me through Iceland. If this story found a place in you, stay a while longer. There are more journeys waiting, more voices, more silences, more truths that whisper beneath the noise. This is Fascinating Discoveries. And wherever you are tonight, may the world feel a little wider and your heart a little quieter.